What's up, guys? I'm Greg.
I'm John.
We're going to talk about Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Been really looking forward to this flick after all those trailers. To make this blunt, you have to check this out on 4DX. When this movie was done, we all said, there is so much 4DX.
This is the 4DXest film I've ever
Most
seen.
X's you could experience.
I feel like I lived through that disaster.
This movie has so much like fight scenes and battle sequences and different weather locations, and every time they change it up, boy, do they utilize it with the strobe lights, the smoke effect, the snow, the fire effects, the heating effect, like
the water.
The way they time, not just the timing of the chairs, but the specific movements of how the chairs work were so calculated throughout this film. It was a nonstop ride, and when the fights are going on, you feel like you're a part of it. It actually enhances the emotional intensity of the fight sequences. So yes, thank you guys for bringing us to there, because wow, 4DX to the extreme there. On to the actual review of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. We've seen these trailers. It looked beautiful. It looked epic. The basic plot line is, I'm just going to refer to them by their actor names. Kyle Chandler has been brought in by Monarch because his ex-wife, Vera Farmiga, their daughter, Millie Bobby Brown, have been kidnapped by eco-terrorists, played by Tywin Lannister. And
Charles Dance.
These eco-terrorists, they basically want to unleash all the Titans. Now that 5 years have gone by, they know where a lot of Titans are located. They want to unleash them, global warming, humans suck.
Have them reset the world.
You know how those plot lines go in movies. And weirdly enough, as much as I hate that trope, just being beat to death in films, it actually works in this movie. Like the idea, the concept of it, does that mean it's always logical in their approach? Not necessarily.
But it makes sense to include it. Godzilla has always had an ecological bent, at least somewhere.
For this movie, I felt it to be appropriate inclusion, backed by a powerful PowerPoint presentation several times in this movie for most expositional scenes when a character has a computer. Just here you go, I prepped all this. I don't have open Google Chrome tabs. I have a whole slide ready for you to go. What are the main things you show up for in this film? The human character. The main things you show up for this movie are the monster battles, the epicness, and then coming off of the 2014 Godzilla, which apparently has people divided. I wasn't fully aware of this until recent talk of this specific installment, but apparently a lot of people weren't on board with the fact that Godzilla only shows up for 3.5 minutes in the first one.
No, they were not. And they very much took that criticism to heart in this movie.
The studio notes are very apparent here. There is monster mayhem a lot in this movie, and you definitely get more Godzilla in here. Off of that alone, for a theater experience, I don't know so much about, if this was like a Netflix movie or something, like, oh, you got to check this out. I'm sure it would still be plenty to appreciate, but off of a theater experience, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm recommending this movie because I'm going to go again because the visual palette in here is so beautiful. Like, they make up a bunch of great excuses to go to different parts of the world in this movie and get different types of weather conditions to see Godzilla and Ghidorah fight in the snow, and then the heat of Mexico and lava. The fight scenes in here are so epic, and I love the confidence in the visuals where you get so many awesome close-ups and so many shots that just look like paintings and portraits in here. For the visual aesthetic alone, and for the fact that they fully deliver on this monster mayhem for a theater experience, hell yeah. That's not to say there's not problems with this movie, but for a theater experience, yeah, absolutely go check this out.
Yeah, I mean, the big screen spectacle and the kaiju are really the stars of this movie, and yeah, they definitely took that criticism to heart. Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of the things that dog a lot of other Godzilla installments, but especially if you're down for the spectacle and if you are a diehard Godzilla fan, definitely the movie theater, the biggest screen possible, the most deluxe presentation you can find is the way to enjoy this, because, I mean, it's the epitome of a summer blockbuster, and if there's anything that it arguably nails, it's the monster fights, and those need to be as big as possible.
And the music in here is also wonderful.
Bear McCreary.
I loved listening to that music in this film, and awesome sound design too. I didn't know that like the embargo had lifted when we were watching the movie, so I didn't know what anyone thought of this movie before. I had no idea.
I saw some tomatoes.
Yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea what people thought of this movie. My initial opinion, which seems to be held true after breezing through some capsules is like it's the most I've done so far. This is what I thought when I was watching it, because there were enough that I picked up on of like some Godzilla lore and some Easter eggs and stuff. Is that if you're a hardcore Godzilla fan, like if you're a fan of the like just the franchise in general, you're probably gonna love this movie. If you're not someone who's necessarily a big fan of that and is more of just like a film enthusiast and really loved and appreciated the execution of the 2014 Godzilla,
this will make you appreciate that movie more.
Yeah, you probably won't like this movie.
Yeah.
The human characters in here, it's not a good script, or at least it's not a good edit from a 4-hour movie initially. It's one of the two.
Severely cut down.
Like, it's either just a terrible script or it's a really edited down movie.
Weirdly, it feels like somebody made like a military thriller drama thing and then really cut it down to its main plot points and then shoved a bunch of monster action where all the scenes used to be. And that's kind of how the human story in this plays out, which isn't out of place necessarily for a Godzilla film. You shouldn't just give a pass because we don't expect good character work and good human story. They aren't very good in this movie. They're mostly saved by the actors who are all committed like 1,000% to the heavy drama.
There's a point where you're like, they are all going for the heavy. Other than Bradley Whitford, who just seems to want to have a fun time, everyone else in this movie throughout goes for the heavy.
Yeah.
And for a script that's not good, I feel like it could have weirdly used some Michael Dougherty touches to it. Some more of that fun that could have made up for a lot of the human interaction and human drama, because honestly, most of the focus is on the humans. So it's hard not to think and criticize that element.
Old Godzilla movies, you can say that of too, and that kind of makes this land for me among the mid-range of all the films, just because it doesn't make a thin story and thin characters in a way where it knows what it's doing and has fun with that fact. The problem for me too is it's kind of a boilerplate human story. We've seen these circumstances and half this dialogue 1,000 times and 1,000 other of this kind of movie. So I kind of just wish they had gotten more original with what kind of human story they wanted to try and shove into this, because it's always going to be kind of problematic to do. We're always going to want to see the monsters fight, and we're always going to need to put that around some sort of story. But yeah, I wish Michael Dougherty had been able to put a stylistic stamp of some kind on this, or a personality on it, because the pace and the tone overall mostly just felt like cacophony. It didn't really have a dynamic much for me.
The first half of this movie I actually really enjoyed. There's a couple of scenes I could think of that truly provided some real suspense for me, real tension. Even though the characters are all archetypes that we've seen before, I was on board for the characters in the first half of this movie. The basic setup of Kyle Chandler and his weird, looking at wolves experiments as he's doing, and Vera Farmiga and Millie Bobby Brown, their dynamics, everything about them I was on board for. A little bit past the halfway point when they get to like Mexico, where Rodan's introduced, as you see in the trailers. It was after that when everything just starts
it starts to implode.
So much plot, so convoluted, so much just keeps coming in, and a lot of convenient stuff. And Kyle Chandler just seems to know everything about everything in this movie. Like, every actor in this movie does a pretty good job. It's just the writing of them, and I think the most disappointing part of it is, in terms of marketing, is Millie Bobby Brown is barely a character in this. She's just pretty much a daughter.
It's not just that the human story is lackluster. There were times where it would have me distracted or asking questions all of a sudden about what's possible in this world that I shouldn't really be thinking about in this movie. I thought the movie was at its best when it was taking its time and being visual, because there are a couple moments that really bother to change the tone, have some beautiful choral music and some different color palettes, especially when like Mothra is on screen, or there's another sequence involving Godzilla. I won't get into too much detail, and Ken Watanabe as well. Like, that I thought was a gorgeous sequence that really pulled me in and captivated me. Yeah. And I spent the rest of the movie wondering kind of why more of it didn't give me that feeling.
And even though you get more Godzilla in here, technically, to me it only felt like you get like 15 more minutes of screen time of Godzilla. I really feel like you got so much more Godzilla in here. My one complaint about the handling of Godzilla is I never felt like he had a scene that was his. The first movie, he doesn't just have moments in the first movie. That final fight, that's his scene, Godzilla. Or even in the big finale fight of this movie, there's so much cutting around to other stuff and so many other things going on. I can't go into spoilers of stuff. I just never felt like Godzilla had his scene. I felt like he always had moments, even in the finale, like, that's his moment. These are moments, but not the Godzilla scene, you know?
Yeah,
like this 5-minute chunk is all here. You know, like I never felt that. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the other monsters get that, and Godzilla for a lot of the movie is sort of like, oh, looks like you're having a rough time with these guys. Just get in there and do it, buddy.
But, you know, Godzilla's still cool in it. The movie's still a lot of fun. Still plenty to be had. And what you mainly care to show up for, it works. Yeah. Is it a jam-packed plot in the last half especially? Oh, yeah. But, hey, that's not what you're there for. You're there for awesomeness, right?
Yeah.
Go
what you want,
fun.
you're going to get. And you might just have to sit through some people talking in the middle of it.
Did you see Godzilla King of the Monsters? Who do you want to see Godzilla verse? What's crossover do you want? It's not King Kong, which this movie really wanted me to be reassured of every 15 minutes that Kong is going to be in the next movie. You guys can subscribe to the Reject Nation. Click that notification bell. If you like this video, hit the like button. And last but not least, Patron of the Day. Shout out to a man named Tyler Haig. Tyler, this movie is your kind of movie. Trust me, dude. You don't care about nuance. You don't care about heavy characterization.
Emotional arcs.
You care primarily about having a balls to the wall time, because that's you every day.
Balls
flapping your
wall.
balls all over your apartment walls. Every time we've done a Google Hangout with you, that's usually the intro that we get with you, buddy. And this movie certainly defines that.
Oh, yeah.
Your balls on my walls. Walls being my face as a metaphor.
If these walls could talk,
They would be my face.
with balls on it.